Midweek Pictorial, August 19th, 1920. International Convention of the Universal Negro Improvement Association gathered at Liberty Hall, West 138th Street, New York City. The purpose of the association is to educate the Negro throughout the world economically, socially, politically, and culturally. There was a very large attendance of the leaders of the race, and the proceedings were fraught with interest. Governor James M. Cox of Ohio was notified at Dayton, Ohio on August 7th of his nomination for the presidency. A crowd of 50,000 people faced him when he made his speech and replied to the notification. Civic pride caused partisanship to be laid aside for the day, and members of both parties were represented in the crowd. At intervals during the speech of acceptance, the throng broke into cheers. The governor read his speech from manuscript so that there might be no deviation from the text. In his address, he attacked the United States senators who had stood in opposition to the ratification of the Versailles Treaty without modification. He declared that the United States must never enter a separate peace with Germany. He was unexpectedly clear and definite in endorsing the League of Nations Covenant, and seemed to be in substantial accordance with President Wilson on that question. He attacked the profiteers, and promised that if he were made president, they would find themselves in the grip of the criminal law. At the close of his speech, he received a great ovation. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the Democratic nominee for vice president, received the notification on August 9th at his home in Hyde Park, New York. It was a more home-like gathering, and of course a smaller one than that which had greeted Governor Cox in Ohio. 9/10 of the audience were composed of his friends and neighbors, though there were many eminent men present from all over the country. Chairman George White of the National Democratic Committee made the speech of notification. Mr. Roosevelt, in his response, paid a tribute to Governor Cox as the standard-bearer of the Democratic Party, and endorsed the League of Nations, which he declared was a practical solution of a practical situation. Through it, he declared, we may, with nearly every other duly constituted government in the whole world, throw our moral force and our potential power in the scale of peace. He asserted that there need be no fear of a supernation, as under any circumstances that concerned this country's action, the Constitution of the United States would be in every way supreme. Photo caption: Governor Cox and Franklin D. Roosevelt marching at the head of the Cox Parade in Dayton, Ohio, August 7th, on way to scene of notification ceremonies. Ladies Band from Barberton, Ohio, one of the features of the parade at Dayton, Ohio, August 7th, in ceremonies attending the notification of Governor Cox of his nomination for the presidency by the Democratic Party. The women marched and played well, and met with hearty applause. Enormous crowds at the fairgrounds at Dayton, Ohio, August 7th, when Governor Cox delivered his speech of acceptance of the presidential nomination. It was estimated that 50,000 people were present. The governor spoke with deep feeling, and his speech was frequently punctuated with cheers. Franklin D. Roosevelt delivering his speech of acceptance of the Democratic nomination for the vice presidency, August 9th, at his home in Hyde Park, New York. Most of his audience were fellow townsmen, though many came from a distance. Unveiling of the statue of Abraham Lincoln in Canning Square, London, England, July 29th. A large throng was present, though rain was falling. The presentation speech was made by Elihu Root. Movie theater in a jungle at Rabaul in German New Guinea in the South Pacific. A show is held every Saturday night, and the natives crowd the structure. Naturally, it is the slapstick kind of drama that appeals to them, and their shouts of laughter at funny situations can be heard for a long distance from the building. California is the paradise of motion picture companies, but hitherto Los Angeles has been favored above the other cities in this respect. Oakland recently decided that she was an ideal location and invited the directors and stars of the Associated First National Pictures to visit the city and look over its advantages. The stars received a wonderful welcome, and, as can be seen, an enormous throng turned out to greet them. One of the players was made mayor for the day. Little Frisky, the property of Mr. R.A. Babcock of Milwaukee, and believed to be the smallest pony in existence. When he was born, he weighed 17 pounds and was about the size of a puppy. He is now a little over a month old, is 26 inches high, and weighs 28 pounds. Mr. and Mrs. Babe Ruth on their way home. It is a different kind of Homer from the ones that the stalwart batsman has been in the habit of making. It goes without saying that Mrs. Ruth is an ardent fan, and takes great pride in her husband's record-breaking achievements. Some of the 780 children refugees from the Ural Mountain District in Russia, who recently arrived in San Francisco on the steamship Yolme Maru, en route to their parents and homes in Petrograd, whom they have not seen for the last 2 years or more, having been sent from that city in 1918, when the fighting began between the Bolsheviks and the counter-revolutionaries. In the meantime, they have been cared for by the Red Cross. How many of them will find their parents alive is a matter of conjecture. The Petrograd of 1920 is very different from the great city of 1918. At the latter date, there was a population of over 2 million, but since that time, typhus, cholera, and other plagues have swept over the city and reduced the population to 650,000. Communist meeting at Amsterdam, Holland, with a communist paper in evidence and a muzzle held above the placard, in derision of the alleged efforts of the authorities to check free speech. Communism has made considerable strides in Holland, as it has in almost every European country following the war, but the authorities have been able thus far to confine its demonstrations and prevent any overt act of revolution. Drastic steps have been taken by the British government to suppress the revolt with which Ireland is seething. A bill has been introduced in the House of Commons practically suspending the right of trial by jury in certain parts of Ireland. The bill nominally is operative all over the island, but will be applied only to the most seriously troubled districts. It is practically a form of martial law, although in every case on trial, a civil administrator will be present to judge and advise. As was to have been expected, great opposition to the bill was voiced by the Irish members of Parliament, and one of their leaders, Mr. Devlin, became so vehement that he was ejected from the House. The bill was alleged by the government leaders to be necessary because it had become practically impossible to convict anyone of a crime committed against the military or the police. It was difficult to secure juries, and even after they had been secured, conviction was impossible because of the fear of vengeance on the part of the friends of the defendants. There is little question that the bill will be passed and be shortly in operation. The need of its passage has been accentuated by reason of the murder of Commander Smythe and Mr. Brooke, and of others less notable, and also by the bloody fighting in Belfast, Cork, Londonderry, and other centers of resistance. Interest has centered recently in the action to be taken by the British government in the case of Archbishop Mannix of Australia, who sailed from New York on the White Star liner Baltic July 31st. The British government has stated that he would not be permitted to land in Ireland, and had issued orders to the Baltic and other steamers to omit Queenstown as a port of call. A great reception had been planned to the Archbishop at Liverpool, which was the destination of the Baltic. On August 8th, the Baltic arrived off the Irish coast, and when she was near Queenstown, a British destroyer came alongside, and the Archbishop was told that he would not be allowed to land in Ireland or in Liverpool, nor could he go to Glasgow or Manchester. The original intention had been to land the Archbishop at Fishguard, but for some reason this was changed, and he was landed at Penzance. He was driven to the residence of Canon Wade, the Roman Catholic priest at that place, and later took the train for London, accompanied by 2 detectives. He was treated with the greatest courtesy, but kept under close surveillance. He declared in an interview that he had not intended to express his views to the Irish people, because they were fully capable of forming their own opinion. He thought that the action of the government was silly. "I have made no plans whatever for the future," said Archbishop Mannix when asked if he would attempt to get to Ireland. It is considered that it would be most difficult for him to move anywhere unobserved, as the place where he is stopping is already under surveillance. "If this sort of treatment is accorded a man of my position, the world certainly will ask itself what may happen to the poor Irish peasant," declared the prelate to the Associated Press correspondent. "This whole thing shows to what straits the British government has been driven in trying to handle the Irish situation," he continued. "It shows to what a panicky condition the government has been reduced." The general attitude of the British press on the government action is unfavorable. With one exception, all the London papers, as well as provincial papers, declare that the arrest was a blunder. It is evident, however, that the government, having taken the step, proposes to keep its word and prevent the prelate from visiting the island. Photo caption: Wire defenses at the Convent St. Matthew's Roman Catholic Chapel at Ballymacarrat. Benches have been interwoven with barbed wire so as to form a barrier that could only be surmounted or cut through with great difficulty. Serious fighting took place in the vicinity of the chapel. Display of the Union Jack at the gates leading to a Protestant church on the Newtonards Road, Ballymacarrat. Belfast is strongly Protestant, and the rioting was based as much on the differences in religion as upon opposing political beliefs. Police lined up at Bendridge Police Barracks previous to marching to Clonerley, prior to taking part in the funeral of Divisional Commander G.B.F. Smythe, DSO. The latter had been assassinated by a band of armed Sinn Féin raiders, who entered the room where he was sitting and shot him dead as he was rising from his chair. Corner of High Street and Royal Avenue in Belfast, where rioting was fiercest during the recent disorders that have convulsed the city. Belfast is the center of the Unionist strength in Ireland, and the feeling against the Sinn Féiners, who are in the majority in the greater part of Ireland, is most bitter. The fighting started in the Factory District and gradually spread to other quarters of the city. Troops marching through the streets of Belfast with their fingers on the triggers of their rifles, ready for any trouble that might develop. The trouble started in that city from a boycott instituted against Sinn Féin workmen and rapidly assumed great proportions. Ruins left in the wake of the storm of rioting that swept over Belfast. 13 were killed and over 300 wounded before the outbreak could be suppressed by the use of armored cars and machine guns. Some of the looted shops on the Newtonards Road, where the mobs had gotten out of control of the military and police and were able to plunder without restraint. Both the Orangemen and Sinn Féiners gave full sway to their political passions. Serious rioting took place in Denver, Colorado during the week ending August 7th. 5 persons were killed and 34 were injured. The rioting was the outcome of a strike for higher pay. An injunction had been sought and secured by the city to prevent the men from striking, and also to prevent the company from lowering wages. It is alleged that the action of the men violated the injunction, and that agitators led their comrades to bloodshed and the destruction of property. The civil authorities seemed at first powerless to cope with the disorders, and a call was sent for federal troops. 500 of the latter were ordered to Denver from Camp Funston, Kansas. Besides their ordinary equipment, they were furnished with armored motor cars equipped with mounted machine guns, and with these they patrolled the downtown districts. Other machine guns were mounted on tops of buildings near the center of disorder. Matters have now quieted down, and negotiations for a peaceable settlement are in progress. Photo caption: Cars overturned by Denver rioters in front of Cathedral. Wrecked cars in Denver, Colorado on the morning after the rioting had been suppressed. 5 people were killed and over 30 wounded in the fighting. Water bicycle with 2 passengers at Evanston, Illinois. It can make 8 miles an hour with 1 passenger, or 6 miles with 2. The tank is airtight, and the rest of the apparatus consists of a bicycle frame and screw propeller. It works successfully. David Swarthout and James Smith, proprietors of a motor repair shop in Evanston, Illinois, are here shown with their water bicycle as it appears on land. The machine is worked in water as a bicycle is on land. World's weightlifting record being made by C.W. Wheeler at the Camberwell Weightlifting Club's meeting in England. He made a right-hand swing of a 163-pound dumbbell. Unveiling of monument to the glorious dead at Tottenham, Ontario, Canada. It bears the names of the battles in which men from that community participated. A mountain of gin piled up in the Custom House grounds at Havana. It has lain there for months on account of the congestion of the port, which is unprecedented. The French are an emotional as well as brave people, and events that recall the courage and sacrifices of their people stir them perhaps to deeper feeling than that experienced by more phlegmatic nations. The ceremony illustrated by the accompanying pictures of the depositing of the flags of the French regiments in the Invalides was one that stirred them to the depths. What those flags meant to the people who had borne the chief brunt of the war and had fought their way to victory through 4 years of agony and heartbreak can only be dimly appreciated by us at this distance. But to the onlookers who had heard the thunder of the German guns not many miles from Paris, who had been forced to seek refuge in tunnels and cellars while hostile bombs were dropped from the sky, who had lost husbands, fathers, and sons on the bloody battlefields of their ravaged country, the ceremony meant more than words can express. It was fitting that the flags should find their final resting place in the Invalides that contains the remains of the greatest soldier that France or the world ever knew. There they will remain as the imperishable memorials of the glorious victory that saved civilization. Photo caption: France has recently been stirred again with glorious memories of the war in the ceremonies attending the demobilization of some of her famous regiments and the deposit of their flags in the Invalides. Some of the 15,000 troops who took part in the celebration are here seen on the parade grounds at Paris. Marshal Pétain, foremost in group of officers, saluting the flag of one of the regiments that had fought for France as it is being carried into the Hôtel des Invalides. Color bearers trooping by with the flags that were to be deposited in the Hôtel des Invalides. This structure is one of the most notable in Paris. Features of the patriotic Jubilee of the Sokols at Prague, the capital of Czechoslovakia, at the end of June 1920. Thousands and tens of thousands of people in picturesque costumes took part in drills to music, living pictures, pageants, and athletic dances. The exercises were held in the stadium on the plains outside of Prague. It is an enormous field, capable of accommodating as many as 150,000 people, and at times during the festival, there were more than 17,000 people in the arena itself taking part in the pageants. The costumes were bewildering in their color, variety, and beauty, and each community that took part vied with the others in the snowy whiteness and dazzling brilliancy of their dress. It was a festival that was distinctly national, and that could be seen in no other part of Europe. The Sokol is an organization of athletic clubs that extends all over the Republic. It was founded about 70 years ago, and has served not only to produce an athletic breed of men and women, but has proved an agency for the development of patriotic feeling. The pageants that were staged at the recent celebration represented in vivid form the growth of the Czechoslovak national spirit. They showed the oppressed people forced to fight on the side of their despotic rulers in the recent war, and the revolt that freed them and made them an independent nation. Liberty joined with victory was finally enthroned. The advance of the Bolshevist armies against Warsaw still continues. On August 10th, they were reported to have reached a point within 40 miles of the capital, and to have captured several points south of Brest-Litovsk. The Polish government had not left Warsaw, but preparations had been made to do so if it should become necessary. It is said that in regions that have already come under the Bolshevist control, they have organized a Soviet form of government. The Poles had been seeking for some time to arrange an armistice, but on one pretext or another, this had been deferred by the Soviet authorities, and it was thought that they hoped to have the capital in control before negotiations should be begun. In the meantime, resistance of the Poles seems to have stiffened somewhat, and General Haller's army is reported to be entrenched in a strong strategic position. The situation has been complicated somewhat by the refusal of the Polish military authorities to permit General Maxime Weygand of France to direct military operations. 800 French officers are said to be in Warsaw ready to reorganize and lead the Polish forces. But whether through national jealousy or Bolshevist propaganda, their offers have not been received with the cordiality that was expected. The Allied powers seem definitely to have abandoned all thought of actual warfare against the Bolsheviks in support of the Poles. The British labor unions have threatened to resort to extreme measures if the government should embark upon military operations. France alone of great Allied powers seems ready to assist with troops, but her operations would be hampered by the refusal of Germany to allow the passage of troops across her territory. The premiers of France and England are reported to have settled upon a definite and drastic resumption of the blockade as a weapon against Russia. How effective this will prove remains to be seen. The Bolshevist authorities are evidently playing for time, and their suggestions are evasive and non-conclusive. The idea of a conference at London to settle the peace terms seems to have been definitely abandoned, and it is likely that the Articles of Peace will be signed at the same time as those of the armistice. What those terms will be are as yet a matter of conjecture. The Bolsheviks have claimed that they are willing to allow Poland a larger territory even than that agreed upon by the peace conference, but it is likely that this offer will be coupled with a provision for the disarmament of the Polish forces, and possibly the introduction of a Soviet form of government in Poland. It was announced on August 12th that France would actively assist General Wrangel in his operations against the Bolsheviks in South Russia. This action seems to have come as a surprise to Great Britain. It is possible that the threat will serve to modify the Soviet terms to Poland in the negotiations now in progress. Photo caption: Long line of prisoners taken by the Polish army in its first advance against Kyiv. Polish soldiers attached to Haller's Corps in shallow trenches near River Bug. Close-up view of some of the Bolsheviks captured by the Poles in recent operations. Various types of the conglomerate population from which the Bolshevist soldiers are recruited. Polish convoy passing through a town near the fighting front. The wagons are decrepit and inadequate, and the troops have suffered from lack of supplies. Lineup of Bolshevist prisoners at a Polish army outpost. Some are wearing old German uniforms. Much-needed supplies being furnished to Polish refugees through the aid of American welfare organizations. Note the American flag on car. Polish recruits marching to the front to join their hard-pressed comrades on the fighting line. Men of all ranks and classes are volunteering, including some that have scarcely passed beyond boyhood. Women, too, are joining the ranks in large numbers. Electric razor containing a motor and pair of fine blades. It is operated with 1/50th horsepower and is so small as to be easily carried in the pocket. It cannot cut the skin. New form of windmill in which cortical vanes are used. It furnishes 5 times the power supplied by the ordinary type of windmill. Remarkable rivetless ship, the SS Fulliger, which has just been completed at Liverpool and is now undergoing final tests. She is an oil-driven cargo steamer of 500 tons, and if successful, may revolutionize shipping. From stem to stern, the Fulliger contains no rivets, and the plates are electrically welded by a new process. The tremendous saving in labor is evident at a glance. New pipe cutting and threading machine. It is electrically driven and is designed for threading pipe. It is extremely simple and portable, can be readily wheeled from one place to another, and saves labor enormously. A 12-inch thread that would take 2 men 2 hours to cut by hand is completed by this machine in 15 minutes. Novel type of plowing machine that marks a radical departure from the customary manner of tilling the soil. It was designed and has had a successful demonstration by L.A. Daisy of Montreal. The machine is constructed on the unit principle, the plurality of plows being carried by the tractor, all movements being operated direct from the tractor motor located at the front end of the framework. The various operating levers are all handled from the driver's seat. The raising or lowering of the plow arm is accomplished by engaging a clutch that operates a screw shaft connected with a cable running over a set of pulleys. The combined forward movement of the machine and the lateral travel of the plows give a herringbone appearance to the plowed land. In a recent test, the machine plowed about 3 acres an hour. The immense size of many Canadian farms makes the invention one of great value. Whip-poor-will Jr., one of the whizzing American motorboats that was expected to compete in the races off Cowes, England, for the British International Trophy that represents the motorboat championship of the world. Unfortunately, she caught fire and was destroyed, thus reducing the number of American contestants to 2. Miss Detroit V, the 38-foot American challenger for the British International Trophy. She is counted on as a sure winner if the sea happens to be rough on the day of the race. Her power consists of 2 12-cylinder Liberty motors driving twin screws. She has a broad bow and wide stern, as well as a sharp chine. The day she was launched, her speed did not fall much short of 70 miles an hour. Miss Detroit V, racing along under full speed, her bow out of the water and leaving a cloud of spray in her wake. She is owned by G.A. Wood of Detroit. Now that the Whip-poor-will Jr. has been burned, the Miss Detroit V will be the chief reliance of the Americans in case the sea is rough. If the waters are extraordinarily smooth, Miss America, it is predicted, will take her crew about the course faster than it has ever been traveled before.